In this tutorial, we're going to take all of the elements that we just built with the earlier tutorials and pull them together in one common structure. So it's a facility that we're turning into the indoor skate park, and we're just going to go through the steps of how we created that and how we can quickly make a structure and then arrange the other components inside. So we're going to start by showing the actual facility itself. So this is just an outdoor, it's a basketball court that the plan is to convert it into a usable, completely enclosed skate park. So if you notice this design, it's really got a lot of symmetry, which is something that we can use. We've used that in some of our other designs, like the half pipe. So in this example, we measured some of the basic dimensions that we need to create this. And if you look at the pillars and the truss, you'll notice that it's certainly even. It's evenly symmetric as if you divide it right down the center here. So we certainly only need to build half of it. And what it looks like is that we can actually get away with just building maybe 1/8 of it. There's 8 pillars and truss on each side. So all we really need are the dimensions for the pillar and then maybe this truss area underneath, and the rest is really easy to put together around that. There's really not a whole lot of components to this. So we measured that ahead of time. So we took basic dimensions of the pillar and the truss, and with that, from this image, we were able to construct one of those components. So that's 1/8 of what we need. From this point on, it's really just a matter of exploiting that symmetry and replicating this component multiple times to turn it into the or I should say the indoor skate park. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to combine these two components. So if I select pillar and truss over here in the structure tree, while I hold the control button, it highlights them both. And now I can right click and say move to a new component. And let's just call this component pillar and truss. And now I can look at these together. So if I hide the visibility of the entire component, then the other two is going to hide with it. Or I could also just hide one individually if I wanted to do that. So now basically these two elements are going to get lumped into operations that I'm going to do over this entire component. So the first thing we're going to do is we know that the distance between a truss and a pillar segment is 16 feet. And that's because we've measured it outside on the basketball court. So in order to do this copy, one of the easiest things you can do is just use the move command. But instead of just moving the object itself, we're going to hold the control button while we do the operation. And as long as we hold the control button while we move, not only does it move it, but it actually creates a copy of it in the process. So this whole component is highlighted, so that means the move is going to be applied to both of these elements. As you can see, the whole component is highlighted. And if you look at where the image was, we're on the front side of this image, so we know we want to replicate this 3 more times. And if we can separate it by 16 feet, we'll have pretty much half of that structure built. So I'll highlight that object again. We're ready to move, and now I can hold the control button down, which is on the bottom left of your keyboard. And now as I move the red arrow, I can go out. In this case, I went past 16 feet, but it's highlighted. So I know that I can type in 16 and give it the units, and it'll put it right in place. And now I can do that operation again. I can either select it this way, or I could select just over here in the structure tree as well. So I'm just going to do that same operation again. It's really not that many to do. So I'll go all the way out to 16 feet. And then I'll do it one last time. I'll grab this one and I'll hold control and slide out, and I'll just type in 16 feet. So I pretty much have half of my building constructed. Now now what we can do is use the mirror function. Instead of moving and rotating, let's just combine the operation on all four of these. And if I hold shift and select the top and bottom, it'll just select them all. So now if I go to the mirror operation, Space Claim is asking me to select the mirror plane. And if this section here is a good enough plane, and I think it is, I can just choose that face. And now it wants me to select the bodies to be mirrored. So I think I can actually go in this. Well, no, let me try. And that worked. I selected over here in the structure tree and grabbed my individual component, and you can see now it's got a copy of each one of them, and it even tells us that there's a mirror being maintained between them. And there might be reasons why we want to eliminate that, but for now we're just going to leave it. So that's our basic structure. And now really the only thing to do is to maybe add a floor, and then we'll start to bring in our components. Now there's a couple ways to go about building the floor. We're not going to worry about being exact here, so we're going to go into sketch mode, and let's use the sketch plane that's aligned with the bottom of the pillar footing here. Okay, so remember, Space Claim is asking me to choose the plane that I want to put a sketch in, and I've got all these different options as it senses faces of objects. So I didn't click anything yet, but now I'm going to select the pillar bottom, and that gives me a template basically that I can put my floor on. So I use the compass down at the bottom left to orient and get a straight view, and all I'm going to do is in sketch mode just draw another rectangle by going into the rectangle function, and I'm just going to include the general boundary of this footprint here. So let's just grab a point about right there to start, and I don't know the exact numbers here, so I'm actually going to use the guidance that I get from Space Claim and try to include the pillar, and that looks like it's pretty much close enough. As I drop that second point, it's actually waiting for me to do another rectangle command if I wanted to, so I'm going to hit escape 2 times. Now I'm back in select mode, and as I go into 3D mode, you can see that that new surface is there. Now another thing is, realistically, the floor is probably not going to end right where the walls do. So we can also use this pull function on surfaces. So let's just pull it. I grabbed an edge in this case, and I'm going to pull that out. I already like the direction, and let's just pull it out. Let's just say let's pull it out 3 feet in all directions. So I'll let it go, type in 3 feet. I'll hit escape. I can do this to the next edge, and actually Space Claim should let me do the same function. Now actually we're going different directions, so that won't work. But if I select this edge, I can do the same thing. Pull out to 3 feet, type it in directly, pull this edge out to 3 feet, and here's the last one. So that's it for the basic structure. I think we're okay just leaving this as a surface for now. You can see Space Claim identifies it as a surface and not a solid, and that's good enough for us to start bringing in and orienting our components. So to do that, assuming you've already completed the earlier tutorials, if not, you can just go and find the same models that I'm going to look for right now. I can go to File and go into the directory that your current model is in, and you should see the ones that we looked at earlier. Let's start by bringing in, actually I'm just going to highlight every one of them right now. There's a fun box, there's a half pipe, and then there's the steps and rail. So those are the 3, and if I select control while I click all those files, What's going to happen down here is it's going to open up 3 new tabs, which means basically I have one space claim session going, but I've got 4 separate projects. So when I say open, all of those are going to come up, and you can see I can tab through all the individual elements that we already built. So now I can just use cut and paste function. So let's grab the fun box. I can either select it here, or I could have gone to the structure tree. Now I can right click and say copy. Go back to the skate park, and I'll just right click in the space and say paste. And I'm not going to worry about where it is right now because I'm going to move all these components around. So let's just do the same for the others. Grab the half pipe. And then now let's grab the steps. So what you see is all these solids have just pretty much dropped in wherever they are. In the previous tutorials, we weren't really paying attention to which way was up, and it really didn't matter. And the reason we don't care is because it's just as easy to move these around and get these oriented in the right direction and placement. It's convenient to organize your objects and components like we did before. If I grab the fun box and actually grab it this way. So if I right click on the fun box in the structure tree, I can say move to a new component, and let's just call that, well, it'll self name, which makes it handy. And I can do the same with the half pipe. Let me rename this first. And then the last was the steps and rail. We'll move that to a new component. So now I can do that move operation like we saw earlier on the pillars, and I can move this wherever I want. In this case, I'm not going to hold control down because all I want to do is move this one entity. I don't want to make copies of it. So with the fun box selected, I can go to move, and now I'm able to bring this anywhere I want, and I can rotate. And sometimes it's convenient to put these things just out of the way while you make decisions on where the other components are going to be. So just a quick note on the anchor. Let's just use the fun box as an example. The anchor can be used. Think of the anchor as your reference point. So if I want to drop this fun box perfectly on the floor here, if I move the anchor to the floor and then tell Space Claim to move the floor of the fun box to the floor of the building, I know it's going to be perfectly aligned. If I move the anchor in different locations, I might not get the result that I'm looking for. So to demonstrate that, I'll let the anchor show up. I'm in the move function. So it's defaulted in the center of the geometry right now. So as an example, let me just leave it alone. I'm going to say move it in the Z direction and move it up to this surface. Actually, it's not doing it right now. So if I select on the handle first, I can begin the move and now say move up to the floor. But notice what happens. It actually went through the floor. And the reason is because it's not really moving the object as much as it's moving the anchor. Okay? And that might seem confusing at first, but it turns out it's very handy because it gives us the ability to do exact precision placement. So now let's try this again, and I'm going to move the anchor to the floor. So now I know the anchor is tied to the floor. So when I say move it down, and now I say move up to the floor of the building, I don't have any interference with the floor, and it's exactly in the location that I wanted it to be. So you can use this process to grab all of the remaining components. You can orient them the proper way and lay them out in the skate park and try to get a feel for where you think these components should be to get the optimal placement. Whoops. Always remember, if you do a triple click, that's how you select the entire solid. So we know that this is going to go to 270. And now I can use that same trick where I lock the anchor to the floor, and now I move up. And if I say move up to with the anchor on the floor of the steps, and then use the up to function for the floor of the skate park, well, let's see, maybe I did not do what I thought I did. So I'll triple click. And actually, I think in this case I probably want to be out and have complete coverage of the whole space. And when I say move now in this direction, it should sense the floor and bring it exactly where I wanted it to be. So with that, you should feel free to move all the components around and try to get the optimal flow for the skate park, and certainly add additional elements as you see fit, and maybe even eliminate some of these elements to get the best design. That's the end of the tutorial, so good luck.